are you? Would you please stand?
No, absolutely not. I mean, this is not the team of the 90s.
If Quincy doesn't get cut, I think that I'd probably end up on practice squad, if that was possible. Maybe they cut me and I'm playing for somebody else.
We did not want to play. Cleveland didn't want to play. It was a lousy game. Should have never played it.
I couldn't make myself do it. I was just like, done.
Daryl, you mean the world to me. Not just because we share the same backfield, but because you sacrificed so much for me. People don't understand what it took to be a fullback in our system. The sacrifices you made, not simply with your body, but your whole spirit. You took care of me as though you were taking care of your little brother. Without you, I know today would not have been possible. I love you, Daryl, from the bottom of my heart.
There are guys who are vital to a team's success that you can't explain why when you look at a box score. Daryl was one of those guys, and yet he contributed mightily.
It took me about 2 weeks into training camp, and you start peeling that onion back, and you start thinking, wait a minute, I see Emmett, I see Michael Irvin, I see Troy, but this guy, 48, who I barely even knew, 21 years old, don't know the Cowboys that well, that's the guy.
I'm not surprised at how successful it was, because that just didn't happen overnight. You got to give that credit to a lot of people a long time ago.
It's obviously very different growing up in small town USA, but everybody knew each other. Nobody locked doors. We had park systems and red brick schoolhouses and church league basketball. It's just, it was a little, it was definitely the small town that you see in the movies and stuff. It was really unique.
I liked having my family here. That's going to sound strange. But I had that mother hen syndrome where you needed to know where they were. But being a small village, as they got older, they could bike anywhere. You didn't have to worry.
We were outside all the time. Wintertime, we were outside sledding, snowball fights, cross-country skiing, anything. The rule in the summer and spring and fall was when the street lights come on, you've got 5 minutes to be home. And they pop and buzz. So you'd be right in the middle of the football game and it'd pop and zzz, and I mean scatter. Everybody sprinting to their bikes, because literally you had 5 minutes to be walking into your house, or your parents are going to be upset.
The oldest is my sister Janice. So she's 3 years older than Daryl. Then came Daryl in the birth order. He's second. I'm third, 2 years younger than Daryl, and then my younger brother Derek is a year younger than me. So between the four of us, there was only a 6-year age difference. Daryl knew when to behave and when not to behave. So when he was supposed to behave, he would behave. But when he was around, being the big brother, basically the right of the birth order, he would exert his birth order on us.
There's a lot of payback that they could have for me today if they wanted to get it.
Yeah, that all being said, just like, you know, the whole sibling rivalry thing is like, you know, I can pick on my own siblings, but if anybody else picks on them, then you're gonna have to answer to me. So we all did that for each other, you know, as a family. That was, I would say, a family value that our parents instilled in the four of us. So we always had each other's back.
You know, family was first. You know, we say it a lot in a lot of the different things we do. I mean, we use it in football all the time. Football is our second family, you know, family first. You know, these were things that I was taught growing up and that were probably reinforced in just day-to-day situations like that. You know, I can say that to them, but you can't say that to them.
Aikman to fullback Daryl Johnston. Near first down yardage again. That got about 9.5 if it didn't get the first. Keith DeLong tripped him up. Johnston I was talking to before the game. He'd had both knees troubling him. He had one of them drained before the game, and he said they felt pretty good.
He was one of the 3 or 4 toughest guys on those teams. I'd go so far as to say if there was a way to, and empirically I don't think there's a way to do it, but if you made a list of the 10 toughest players in franchise history, there's no doubt in my mind he'd be on it.
He got a good test for his knee right here in the play. Watch, he takes a hit right there on the knee.
It was Memorial Day weekend when Daryl was 10. He was playing Pioneer soccer then, and a good friend was members of the yacht club that you saw down by the river and asked him to go out on their boat with them. And of course we said yes. Beautiful May 30th day. Lake as calm as silk. It was just flat. So no storm, no reason for it. There was another sailboat out and they were from St. Catharines, Ontario. And the boys were on the bow of the boat. Scott was up front and he had his feet hooked over the rail. Daryl said he was upset because he didn't have a way to stabilize himself, and they were doing what they call scooping water, just reaching down in the lake and scooping water. Well, they hit another boat head on.
And both sailboats had their jib sails up, so your vision is obscured. And the last thing I remember is being across the boat and then waking up in the water with somebody around, you know, my neck, you know, everything's fine, you're gonna be, you know, I've got you, don't worry about it. And, you know, well, what happened? You know, there was an accident, we collided.
Both boys were thrown into the water. Daryl got hit by the bow, probably the other boat, I don't really know which boat. And Scott got caught in between the two boats, so he collapsed his lungs. Mr. Miller jumped in for Scott, and luckily Steve Armstrong, who was probably a teenager, maybe on the other boat, jumped in and got Daryl. We definitely think Steve Armstrong saved Daryl's life.
You know, it was amazing, you know, everything that had to be in place to help everything work out the way it did. You know, mine was just a really bad laceration on my right shoulder blade. Scott had collapsed lungs, and you know, he was in the hospital for a while, but his was tough. His was tough. They almost lost him on the table while we were in the emergency room. So yeah, that was hard. I didn't go on a sailboat for a long time.
This is what's so amazing to me is it ain't the 4'2" guy, it ain't the 4'4" guy, it ain't the big 6'2", 230-pound freakish back. It's the football player, and that's what Moose was. The Moose knew how to play football.
There was always something sports related that you could find to occupy your time, and that was you know, that was kind of our outlet. A lot of families that had both moms and dads working, so, you know, up in the morning into the parks, and they kind of became, you know, like, hey, let's go play a pickup baseball game, let's go play a pickup basketball game. So it became kind of one of the, you know, the cornerstones of your youth growing up.
Daryl was very powerful, very explosive, in terms of agility and speed. He had all that at that age, and especially in comparison to the other kids around him. And of course, there was a lot of evidence in that, even hitting the sled and explosiveness and blocking and tackling. But at the time, he was involved with the punt, pass, and kick contest, and he was, winning that and doing extremely well. And that was just another example of the kind of, athleticism, he had at that age.
We always had a great team growing up, and we were always it was kind of ironic, we were always the bigger kids and always in the backfield. I was a quarterback, he was a fullback, and we would just be 30 pounds heavier than our line. But it worked. It was a lot of fun.
I'd say 3 years later, he was 8, so he would have been about 11. And Ann called me on the phone. I was coach of the semi-pro team at the time, and we were playing a local team. And she called and said, is there any chance you can get us on the sideline during the game, because Daryl would really like to see what it's like at that level. We played the game, and after the game, I'll never forget this, Ann came up to me and said, Daryl wants to tell you something. And I said, okay. So I looked at him, and Daryl looked at me, and he just said, Coach, I think I'd like to play pro football. And I looked at him, and normally you might get a little chuckle or a little laugh at the time, but I just learned that sometimes there are certain things that happen with kids that you can see, and I said, hey, maybe that will happen, and it did. It was a really kind of an amazing story, but Daryl had confidence and he had drive, and it was just a great story. It was something, to remember the rest of your life as a coach.
Aikman fake, gets it to Johnston.
He was a tremendous athlete. He could really run. He had excellent hands, and he did it all with a big old neck roll. He didn't look like he'd be the most athletic guy when he was out there on the field, but he could really kind of do it all.
I remember one time Troy Aikman told us that Daryl Johnston is probably the most underrated player in the team. And when you see a championship game like this and an effort like this and all the things we've seen him do, we've seen him go in motion, we've seen him lead block, we've seen him get up on the line of scrimmage as we're watching here. He's a tight end.
Small town, not much money. We were blue-collar workers. Big Friday night out was going to the high school football game. That was about all you could afford to do, but there would be lots of people, all your friends. It was a very social event.
Well, I would say Johnston will get the ball on the pitch here. Here it is. Here's Johnston with the block. Johnston is at the 3. Johnston's in the end zone for the touchdown.
Daryl had a skill set that I've only seen in kids that are maybe 6 foot 175, 5'11", 175. One of the things that I think made Daryl special was he had a skill set like that, but in a 6'2", 215 frame.
Even in my 31 years of being a college football coach and recruiting, I mean, some of the things that Daryl did on the football field, I mean, they were incredible. I remember one game, I think we were playing for the league championship. Daryl, was the starting tailback, starting linebacker. He was also the starting kicker, the starting punter. And in a real critical game in 1983, Daryl was punting and the punt was blocked, and it was blocked right into Daryl's hands, and then he took off with it and scored a touchdown. And that was a big game, and us winning the NFL that year, the Niagara Frontier League, and going on to play in Rich Stadium.
How many have you ever seen that? I never saw it.
It was basically just a mud bath. I mean, it was brutal. And that was the only touchdown of the game. I think it was like 9-6. And yeah, it was a blocked punt that came right back to me, and just was able to spin out and keep my feet. And I think I lost my shoe. I think the shoe came off.
No one else has won a sectional championship, and we did. Yeah. So he was, I mean, for me, that as a coach, that was really the cherry on top of the frosting from a career standpoint and from a team standpoint.
It's kind of our little version of Hoosiers, right? You know, everybody kind of, little convoy going up to Rich Stadium. Yeah, it's very unique. A little Friday Night Lights aspect to it.
It brings the community together is what it does. You go to a game like that and you see people that don't even have kids that are out there supporting the team, and everybody gets excited about the team when, you know, because we're a small school, so for us to have success, it's not easy.
As a senior, when he came back, that's kind of when the light bulbs started going on to me that we've got something a little bit out of the ordinary.
That was a 69-yard drive, highlighted by Johnston's 5-yard run. Now we're going to have the extra point attempted by Johnston. He can
In
make
senior
it 7-0,
year, he
walk
was
into a hole.
a linebacker, a punter, a kicker, and of course a running back. And close game both years. The scores were 7-6. And unfortunately, Daryl fumbled for the second touchdown. And the game was over. So then the next day, and he's sad. I mean, if you've been around athletes, if you're the one that makes a mistake, it's horrible, you know? You feel like you've let the community down, you let the team down. You knew the feeling from the year before, what it was like to win at Rich Stadium.
We just didn't execute well enough, and they also were a very good team.
Yeah, had a critical fumble. So again, you know, just sitting back and reflecting, and you know, where were the areas where we let this one slip through our fingers? Probably weren't as good as we were the year before, overall, but still, I thought we were capable of beating that team again that year.
Daryl Johnston setting things up. Again, he's a very key part of this.
This guy's IQ, football IQ, was unbelievable, and it just didn't pertain to the fullback position. He knew every position, asked questions about the defense, knew everything that there was to know about all the special team phases. He got it.
Fumble, and Daryl Johnston comes up with the ball in the air and gets the recovery for the Cowboys.
He was actually an A student. I taught English. I mention that only because that's usually not everybody's favorite subject, especially in high school. And Daryl was an A student, even during football season. He knew how to make both work, which was amazing to me, really. I think for a kid his age, he understood what he wanted, and he was able to do it.
Dining room table right after dinner was homework time. You can go out after your homework's done and come in when the lights come on, street lights, but your homework had to be done before that.
I just took the competitive environment that I was around in athletics and just shifted that into the classroom.
And I always impressed with the fact that some of his friends would say to me, Mrs. Kackman, you really think Daryl is this good kid and he just does everything the way he's supposed to, but you don't know what he's like when he's not in class. And I remember thinking, okay. I thought, but that's good in a way. In my mind, I thought it impressed me even more that he was at that age able to say, okay, this is what I have to be in school, but I have to be this way on the football field.
Daryl's the nicest kid in the world, but, you know, he had that mean streak in him too when he needed to have it, you know? You can't really explain it, you just know when someone has it, and when he had to turn it on, he could, you know, really turn it on.
I didn't like to lose. Now I get I could get into a fight with somebody, I could get hit as hard as you wanted to on the football field and I wouldn't cry, but if I lost the game, I was not a good example of sportsmanship when I was younger. Hate losing more than you love winning. The sick feeling that comes after a loss to me, is so bad compared to the joy of a victory. So my motivation was always to never have that horrible feeling after a game.
Yeah, Daryl was a leader in so many ways. Again, he was, really a role model of what you want a student athlete to be. A high-achieving student, extremely competitive, great work ethic, and he had the ability to make plays and change a game. And we knew Daryl was the best player in the team. In a lot of games, you just waited for Daryl to make a play that would change the game, and he rarely didn't come through.
As the old adage goes, other than drive the bus and sell the popcorn at halftime, he did it all.
Bennett after Aikman, and he gets it away to the fullback, Daryl Johnston, out to the 44-yard line.
He liked to run with the ball now. He was a running back at Syracuse. He was a running back in high school. Don't think for a minute that Daryl Johnston did not have an ego and didn't want to carry the ball and didn't love to score a touchdown. He understood who he was. He understood who was behind him and next to him, and he understood his role.
He really wanted to go to Penn State, I'll be really honest. That's where he wanted to go. And he did a couple football camps there. And I mailed a tape down that I had made of his high school playing. And it was never even looked back because there was a little yellow sticky note on it saying, "We don't need any more defensive backs." Well, there was no sign of a defensive back on that tape.
They were looking not just at any major college to play football. They were looking for also an extremely high standard academic school. And so that in itself would, and I won't mention schools that it would eliminate, but it would eliminate a number of Division I programs because they just didn't have, they had the football, but they did not have the academic program that they seemed to be interested in.
Syracuse called in January. That's very, very late to be recruited in January. And if I remember right, we went down January 31st and met with Mac. And he wanted a verbal commitment right then. And I said, "We can't do that, Mac. He's been thinking about going to Cornell. And I haven't gotten him down there yet."
It was Ithaca. It was the other school, which is on the opposite hill of Cornell. In Ithaca, New York, and you've got a very good, Ivy program with a great education, and then on the other side of the hill, you've got a very, very good at the time, dominant Division III football program. And so you went down and went to both of those visits, and Jim Butterfield was the coach there that had taken all those teams to the Division III championship games. This is when you kind of make your decision. He asked me what I was thinking. I told him the schools, and at that time Syracuse had just come on board, and I said, Syracuse has just initiated some early communication, and that's kind of interesting. And he's Syracuse, you can't play at Syracuse. Ooh. I think I know where I'm going now. I've always had a prove people wrong mentality, so as soon as he said that, I knew I wasn't going to Ithaca. That was the one thing I knew for sure. And I felt pretty strong that, all right, I'm going to go to Syracuse because you don't know me and you just judged me, so I'm going to prove you wrong.
Recruiting had ended, signing day was upon us, and we had one open scholarship, and we were trying to get this kid out of Eastern Pennsylvania. It was a big-time running back, and it was between us and Penn State, and the kid couldn't decide, right? So whatever the time frame was, 3 days, a week later, 10 days later, whatever it was, the kid decides to go with Penn State, and now we've got an open scholarship.
That was the stroke of luck, what you hear people talk about. You not only have to be adequate physically and talented, you have to have everything go your way almost.
So I'm sitting in the staff meeting, and the coaches are, of course, lobbying for their guy who they want with that 25th scholarship like that. And, of course, Mac was a tremendous, listener, and he listened to all his coaches. He was good at that. And everybody's lobbying, I want this linebacker, I want this corner, I want the, whatever, wide receiver. And finally, Mac's listened to all the arguments going on. Of course, I'm just the equipment manager. I'm sitting in the back just taking it all in. And all of a sudden you hear Mac go, you know something? We're going to go get that kid out of Youngstown, New York. He said, and they were like, who's that? And they go, it's a running back down there. He said, Daryl Johnston.
His dad told him he could always go down to Cornell, but if he went to Cornell, Syracuse wouldn't be an option. It wouldn't be there then. So his dad basically talked him into, you need to take the chance at Syracuse.
That was a really big deal to have a player from our high school play and be offered at that level of football was a really big deal.
Well, he was young, he was raw, he wasn't really recruited by other places, but he was willing to work, he wanted to get better. He had to go a long way to become what he became.
The first time we went down for a fall scrimmage, Daryl was a little nervous about did he really belong there. He was doubting whether he belonged there or not, and we just said, you can't compare to yourself to a senior.
I don't think when he got there initially he was as confident that he could play Division I football.
I've talked to my parents, and you don't remember it, but they said, oh no, there was twice you asked. I'm in over my head. I don't think I made the right choice. And just keep working. So I got to the point where, okay, I'm going to honor my scholarship, and worst case scenario, I graduate from Syracuse University with no college debt. So that was that's where I was. I'm going to get a great education and not have any debt when I get out of here. Whatever else happens beyond that, fantastic. But that's my goal.
Emmett made 17,000 yards running north and south inside the tackles. He was an edge player. He didn't get the ball in sweeps, the ball outside, option plays. His north and south, that's where Emmett went. And he was a great inside runner. And he needed a lead blocker. And that was the guy that did it. And
you lose your passion for the game, which is hard to believe. You love it so much. And I don't know how many people have lost their passion for a sport or an occupation or whatever it is that they've chosen to do in life, and then have the opportunity to rediscover that again. And for me, that's exactly what happened. I had resolved myself to just graduating and honoring my scholarship and not having any college debt, and that was it. And then Jim Hoffer came, and he made football fun again.
Daryl at that time was a redshirt sophomore. And like most kids, he's probably a little bit unaware, and he might admit at that time a little bit disillusioned in what had been transpiring in his own personal career. Let's get him back up to speed. Not going to be a high maintenance person, good student, tough player, all that stuff, but let's get him enjoying football again.
So Daryl eventually came into that system, and we had now a great quarterback who could run like heck. We had a tremendous fullback in Daryl, and we had a really good tailback in those days with a kid named Michael Owens and Robert Drummond. And we had a real good tight end named Pat Kelly. So you had all the elements of a really good option football team. So it was, like I say all the time, sometimes it's the timing, the time and place, the circumstances that existed ended up being great for Daryl.
And it's funny when you look at that team, I say we didn't have a lot of talent, but we had a couple of guys, 5 or 6 guys drafted that year. And those guys played up to their abilities, and I think some of us played, above our abilities, and just trying to keep up with those guys. So it was a strange season. None of us expected to be where we were at the end of that season.
That 1987 team was special. It was a unique collection of guys that loved football. Number one. I've been around teams that had really good athletes, but these kids were committed to being great. We were down by 2 touchdowns. We had the ball about the 35-yard line. And we ran what we called zero trap, which was our nomenclature for the midline trap. Daryl got the ball. Wasn't blocked exceptionally well. Daryl must have literally run over 3 guys and got the ball in the end zone. Amazing play. It was more on will and guts than on execution.
I had no idea that that's what was going on during the course of the run. It was just trying to get to the end zone, trying to help your team do whatever you could do.
This was as moving a play as any I can remember in 40 years of watching college football, at least with my own eyes. It was incredible, and it gave us hope. It got us back into the game because we were shot. We really were, and the pressure of the game was incredible.
It was bedlam. I mean, I've been a part of 3 Super Bowls. That game is just always that is always one of the things that I'll always remember, because it was everything. There's just so much that went into that moment that it really puts it up high in your favorite memory of football.
One Daryl Johnston put in my mind, and I didn't even see the whole thing. I just saw the end of it. And as soon as I saw him cross the goal line, all I could think of was desire.
Extend to Chancellor Eggers, and to your athletic director, Jake, and to your head coach, Mac, an invitation to participate in the 1988 USF&G Sugar Bowl.
That was a hard one. You know, they were 9-1-1. We were 11-0. Unfortunately, that year, Miami and Oklahoma were 11-0. So they were in the Orange Bowl. So we all knew the winner of the Orange Bowl was going to be the national champion. But we'd have liked to have put some pressure on the committee by getting to 12-0 and, taking down, the SEC champion, or co-SEC champion. I think they finished, but they left a sour taste in everybody's mouth. A field goal with 4 seconds left to tie the game.
Well, we actually won the game as far as I was concerned. We outplayed them, but they kicked a field goal to keep them getting beat. That's all.
I've never seen a locker room like that after a game, win or loss. The emotion, or even a huge loss. I've never seen just, the shock, trying to process. Did that really just happen? We had guys walking onto the field when the field goal kicker came out. You're not doing this. And then he just barely made it. I mean, it just got inside the upright, which would have been justice, right? If he clanked it off the upright, that'd have been perfect. But we finished undefeated, but 11-0-1. So.
And now Aikman to throw. Underneath, Daryl Johnston, the fullback. And he's bulldogged at the 46-yard line, a gain of 7.
But at any time during the game, if something tight and Moose feel he needed to say something like, "Hey, Nate, I need for you to do this so I can be able to do this," they would speak up. They didn't have a problem, with speaking up as long as you were a proven guy. And Moose was a very much so proven guy.
Johnston, despite all those tough hits he takes and mostly delivers, has not missed a game as a Cowboy out of Syracuse University.
Daryl was one of the captains, and the other captain was Marcus Paul, who also, he works for me now as one of our assistants here in the weight room. And I always said that those two were the best captains I ever saw on a team, and this is 40 years now, both in college and the NFL.
It was an honor for me to be a co-captain with him, and he was good for me. I learned a lot from me because I'm a little bit more volatile, a little bit more outspoken at that time, and he was a good sounding board for me, but he was also I got this one, I'll handle it better. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. So it was that was a nice compliment. That was a nice compliment.
He had tremendous took tremendous responsibility for his teammates. In other words, if it was to be, let it be on me. That's the way he always felt. And I really felt like the bigger the game, the bigger the stage, the more he put pressure on himself to help his teammates. That's the way he played.
He carried us in a couple games that I remember. I remember the Boston College game where I think we gave him player of the game. You know, we just couldn't seem to do anything right except give him the ball, you know.
Again, Johnston, and just power, spins away, still on his feet. Look at him go down inside the 20-yard line.
I don't know what happened with that one. Almost 200 yards in total offense. That was when the USA Today would have the little capsule in the back, and they'd have the top 25 teams, how they did, and put something in there. So I was all excited. I'm like, oh, I got to be in the capsule this week. And I opened up the USA Today, and it was all my quarterback. And I'm like, oh my God, Todd's had a good year. He's had good games already this year. He's already been in the capsule. I've not been in the capsule. This is my only chance to be in the capsule. And I was so mad. At that.
He's a tough kid, and losing wasn't part of his mantra. Okay, so when things got tough, he didn't fold up into a corner. He'd be a guy to step in the huddle and say, hey, pull it together. What are we doing? Get your head out of your rear end. Like that, you're better than that, things like that. So, I mean, he was that type of guy. Losing wasn't an option with Daryl.
Open secret that the Washington Redskins coveted a strong running back coming in here. And as part of the deal to acquire Gerald Riggs, they have traded away their 1990 #1 draft pick.
I had a good workout with the Redskins, so I would probably put them as a possibility. I mean, I'm not sure. And then the Redskins traded away their second-round pick to Atlanta for Gerald Riggs. So what now? I said, I don't know. We could be here. We could be here all day. I said, that's it for me. Those are the two I felt the best about. It was Miami and Washington. So I have no idea what's going to happen the rest of the day.
They had parties here at home when we were in Syracuse, and I was with most of his teammates and stuff at the apartment in Syracuse, and we had a grand old time.
Dallas has selected Daryl Johnston, running back, Syracuse.
There's one of the players we thought that would have been taken the pick before Washington worked that trade. So Daryl Johnston out of Syracuse is selected.
Gil Brandon's who I talked to on the phone on draft day. So, and that was a weird thing because everybody's there, and the phone rings, and you go into the room, and you're on the phone, and I walk back out, and everybody's gone. There's nobody there. And I went, well, that's great. Everybody comes over, and then they just leave. And they had all run out, and I don't know where they found it in Syracuse, but they had. One of the guys was a huge Cowboy fan already, so he just went to his apartment. He had a blanket, he had hats, but they went out and found any Cowboy garb they could find and brought it back to the apartment. So, yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
For anybody from this area to be drafted, I mean, this area doesn't produce a lot of NFL or NBA or NHL talent, so it's pretty exciting just for the whole community. It's not for me or it's not for the guy down the street, it's for the whole area that got excited to be part of this ride, and it was a heck of a ride for him and for everybody.
Cleveland Gary might be a better receiver and what have you, but Daryl Johnston's a great blocker, tough inside runner, and a real sure-handed receiver. He will be a fine complement to Walker, obviously. Newsom's only going to play one more year. They needed a fullback. Johnston could have been very easily a late first-round pick. This is a value choice for the Cowboys, and like I said, this is one of the players that the Redskins could have had.
Hutchinson, handoff, Smith at left guard, 35, 40-yard line. That should do it. Move over, Sweetness. Make a place for Emmett.
I think where the respect really came was Emmett just recognizing what Daryl meant to him in his successes as a running back, and Daryl took a lot of pride in that. I mean, I think that for every yard that Emmett got, I think there was a real sense of pride for Daryl in feeling that that he contributed, and he certainly did, to those yards and to those records, and Emmitt Smith being the all-time leading rusher.
I knew it all week long. Had a feeling. Congratulations. Thank you. I'm glad I could be here. So happy I could be here. I wouldn't miss this for anything.
There's no me, Michael, or Troy without the essence of those guys. And to have Daryl on the sideline that day, who had led the way for many of those runs, to be there at that moment, to see my dreams come true, and to celebrate with me was very, very, very special.
Thank you so much, man. I enjoyed everything I did for you. You made it fun, buddy. Oh, thank you.
It's probably, of our time together, I think a lot of people will go back to the Hall of Fame induction and what he said there, and that was pretty cool in that environment. But for me, that day on the field when he broke the record, and it's just me and him, that's my favorite.
There's nothing more comfortable than trusting the guy or the guys that are blocking for you. Because I could run, I ain't gonna say with my eyes closed, and feel comfortable that Daryl would get his block. There was no doubt about that. And so he took pride in what he did. And he laid it on the line, not only for me, but for everybody on the ball club.
You know, the validation for me comes, from my peers more than anything. I wanted to be respected by the guys I played against. That meant the world to me. If somebody came out and said, I hate playing against him because he plays every snap hard.
I was just very proud of him and all he had accomplished, in that he had turned his opportunities into reality. He took advantage of every opportunity that was presented to him. He made it through the challenges and accomplished his goals.
The thing that's great too about Daryl is that he hasn't ever forgotten where he comes from. He's appreciative of those people who've helped him along the way.
I think we all need to be grounded every once in a while. It's nice to see where he came from. Yeah, it's nice to see people that played a role in making you out who you are today. And that's where everything started. So
He embodies all of the things that we tell our kids when we are excited about them going into sport, and what they learn from it and what they take from it. Daryl embodies all that.
Probably a lot of the values that I still use today, came from the upbringing in a small town.
This kid is somebody's thing. Look at that handsome Daryl Johnston.
I don't have a cookie. I have nothing. I don't have it. I'm all done.